Thank you so much for inviting me to have a conversation with you and many of the folks that you engage in your country. I really appreciate it, and you did ask me several questions around the idea of passive versus active candidates. I may not follow specifically your list of questions, but I will answer that particular area that you wanted me to talk about. And in addition, in the next couple minutes, I'll talk about a couple of the critical trends that I see happening here in the United States and some of the implications for that. Obviously, as you know, we've been in a recession here like many other countries, and we're slowly coming out of it. There's a number of key issues that are going on. Most of the staffing leaders in this country right now, this year, in 2010, probably 2011 as well, are going to be forced to do much more with, at best, the people and the resources and budgets that they have. Most companies will not increase their staffing headcount, and there are some exceptions to that, but essentially more and more of the attention of the staffing leaders is really on productivity and efficiency. So with that, there are a lot of tools that are coming into play. So let me back up just for a minute, take you on a little bit of an adventure and share some of my opinions and some observations that I have about this issue of active versus passive candidates. I know that in most instances, especially third-party recruiters or recruiters who are working outside the corporation to bring people in, have a preference for presenting what is called passive candidates. But I want to be real clear with you. My sense of this is from 40 years of working as a recruiter, as a recruiting leader, as a consultant, and as an author and speaker, and someone who listens continuously to what's happening on the ground. There is no such thing really as an active or passive candidate. There really is simply a dimension of how actively someone is right now. And that is really what you're trying to get at. There are situations, obviously, where people are on one end of the pendulum and they are out of work and they are absolutely focused on finding a position at this moment. And then obviously there are people who are about to go or about to leave or who want to leave and have good reason for it, etc., and those who are supposedly happy and entrenched and not particularly interested in looking to move at any point in time in the future. So you have this dimension. It's not an on-off switch. It really is a continuum. And I think from the third-party point of view, from the corporate point of view, what recruiting leaders are looking to do now are to focus in on the extent to which a candidate, if they are looking for a job right now, and that is their intent, to leave their company, one is confirm that that individual wants to leave the company and why, because there are some key issues that they ought to be addressing in the new company. Secondly, if they are in fact an active candidate, and active candidates, by the way, are folks that you would be looking for from an opportunistic point of view, a company that has recently failed, a company that has suddenly merged with another corporation, are all targets, in my opinion, of opportunity for active candidates who either are being targeted to leave now or will be targeted to leave in a short period of time. People are always looking for the shoe to fall. The other shoe to fall is kind of a cliche we use here. And as a result are always potentially willing to consider new jobs when their company is undergoing some kind of transition. But I believe that investment should be made the moment you find somebody is a qualified candidate who is passive in the sense that they're not necessarily clear that they want to leave. The real opportunity now is to build a relationship. And fundamentally, those relationships come in a variety of different ways. They're obviously looking, but at some point, they very well will be looking, but what will be the trigger? It may be that they have always had an affinity to go to a company that has a wonderful name, the best leader in the industry that they can think of. So if you could discover or uncover the kind of company that they would be willing to consider, that would be one issue. For others, it may be how much they believe they should be increasing their compensation over the next several years. So if, for example, somebody is in a company and over the next year they expect to get 20, 30%, 40% increases based on bonuses and their performance, then that's the kind of person I want to check back with to see if in fact they have been able to acquire that. Because if they haven't, they are going to now be interested in moving. It could be a location. People obviously have a desire to live in different parts of the country or the world, and so it may simply be that they are only willing to work for companies that would allow them to move to specific areas. And it could be just simply you're waiting for that time or that event in which they're not going to be happy with their boss, or they did not get what they expect, that will allow you to build on that relationship. And so the main difference between recruiting today and recruiting 5, 10, 15 years ago, particularly in corporations, is this whole issue about pipelining, about building relationships and using technology, customer relationship management or candidate relationship management tools that would help us to identify these touch points, these places in time when we should be engaging what you are considering passive candidates. But since I consider everyone active, simply it may not be the right time for them to be active, I look at this continuum and start to look at where the touch points are and how I'm going to organize them, how I'm going to correlate them, how I'm going to script them, what I'm going to say at each new stage in my relationship in discussing a career with a prospect that someday I will place in a company or I will bring to my company, depending upon where I'm at. I'm convinced that these pipeline management tools are in fact really the kinds of tools that most recruiters need to acquire and use. And clearly they could be almost free in the sense that you could build your own pipeline management tool out of an Excel spreadsheet. And I've seen plenty of examples of that. Obviously, companies like Salesforce produce configurable tools that are quite sophisticated that allow you to do pretty much the same kind of thing. And many of the applicant tracking systems are now bolting in these kind of candidate relationship management tools as well. But here's the thing. I think if in fact we're going to make a longer term investment in people who we may not be able to place on a given day, we're also going to have to kind of narrow our focus to the kinds of jobs and the kinds of people in those jobs that are more critical to the corporation short and long term. And so I think the biggest shift that I'm seeing in terms of how we understand recruiting is that more and more corporations are focusing in on different strategies for different types of jobs. And the kind of jobs that the true recruiter will be aligned to in the future will be jobs in which candidates are extremely scarce. Scarce because there may be few people in the country who even study a particular skill set or get experience over a long period of time in that particular skill set. And when we start looking at that kind of narrow focus, now we're starting to look at how do we get our hands around the information about all of the people who have that skill set. I don't mean just a few or a few hundred. I mean every single one that exists, perhaps even in the world, who has that particular skill set. And more, I think it's possible to do that with tools like LinkedIn, with tools like Facebook in the United States anyway. We're seeing this rise of social media and its ability to actually capture information that's relevant and real about literally the universe of all the people in a particular area or a particular skill set or a particular function. So I'm convinced that these tools are rapidly growing, and within the next 3 to 5 years, they will come to dominate the landscape for recruiting. One other thing that perhaps you might want to consider, there's a growing use of the term pivotal in this company to describe those jobs that are most important when it comes to the profit and the income of the company. Usually we think of leadership, people who are at very high levels. But more and more we're starting to understand that pivotal jobs may not be just those jobs that are at the very highest levels, but they may be workers who have customer-facing capability where they are so good at what they do that the customers that they touch immediately want to stay with, are much more loyal to the company, or want to buy more products from that company or services from that company. And so identifying who those people are and what those jobs are and what makes that quality of candidate so much better in driving the performance, the future performance of the company, is becoming an increasingly important recruiting strategy. And learning how to do that requires some academic knowledge or partnering with folks with some academic knowledge to create the kinds of correlations that would allow you to be certain that a candidate, in fact, is so different from other candidates that it's worth paying them or engaging them or working on that pipeline with them to bring them on at a later date. I think this is about enough time, in terms of our discussion. I'd be happy to continue to have a discussion with you and with your cohorts, your colleagues in Ukraine on some regular basis. If you have questions, I'd be happy to talk about them and engage you as well. So let me know how this works for you. I wish you the very best, and I hope that our paths will cross sooner rather than later. Take care now.